Welcome to this deep dive. Today we've got a really intense mission, I would say.
Oh, absolutely. It's a big one.
Yeah. We are unpacking this really profound philosophical critique of modern education and, societal pressure and just generally how we measure human value.
Which is heavily centered around the NEET exam today.
Yeah, the massive medical entrance exam and, well, all those intense protests that have recently surrounded it.
Exactly. And to do this, we're pulling from two very specific, very compelling sources from our research stack.
Yeah, tell them what we're looking at.
So the first is this image of a text message. It's this brief, really urgent plea for guidance sent by a student who's basically caught right in the middle of this academic crisis.
Oh, man, that text message is heavy.
It really is. And the
Yeah.
second source is a series of excerpts from this powerful essay titled Beyond the Rank, The Anatomy of a Fallen System.
Which features the perspective of a philosophical figure named Sumitji, right?
That's exactly.
Now, real quick, before we go any further, I need to establish a very clear baseline for how we're approaching this today.
Yeah, that's definitely important.
Because, look, our sources today are dealing with ongoing protests. They're talking about allegations of systemic failure, political corruption, all of that. So we are maintaining strict neutrality throughout this deep dive.
100%.
We are not taking any political sides here. We're not endorsing any specific factions or, validating the political claims in these texts.
Right. Our goal is just to impartially report and analyze the underlying philosophical ideas.
Exactly. We just want to break down mechanics of these ideas for you, the listener, so you can explore them for yourself.
And honestly, that neutrality is crucial
Mhm.
because the real value of these sources, it doesn't lie in the political punditry.
Right.
It lies in examining the psychology, the psychological framework of a society that is just under immense stress.
Yeah, we're looking at the structural forces that shape human behavior in these massive, super competitive systems.
Which leads perfectly into a question for the listener.
Yeah, so think about this for a second. Have you ever been in a situation where you felt like your entire worth was just being reduced to a single number?
Well, that's such a universal feeling.
Right, like maybe you were staring at some digital dashboard for a corporate performance review or, I don't know, a financial credit score.
Or just a final grade on a screen.
Exactly. And in that heavy moment, it feels like all your complexity, your nuance, your actual life has been compressed into this tiny metric.
It's squeezed into a box.
Yeah. And today, we're exploring what happens when an entire generation is forced into that exact box and, how to consciously break free from it.
Well, that feeling of compression, it sets the stage so perfectly for that first source we have.
The text message.
Yeah, the direct message. So this was sent by a student to their mentor, and they just address him as Sir.
What was the timestamp on that again?
It was 11:40 a.m. And the student writes, Sir, if you can kindly post your perspective of NEET and the ongoing protest in your story, I want to know through you.
Just looking for some kind of anchor.
Right. And then they mention that some recent live class recordings haven't been added yet, and they sign off with, so I'm asking PS. But they spell it PLSS.
See, that specific detail, just spelling it with the extra S at the end, it turns what could be just a mundane logistical question into a genuine plea.
It completely changes the
Yeah,
tone.
it does. This
Huh?
isn't someone just wondering, hey, when is the next study module going to be uploaded?
No, not at all.
The student is asking for a perspective on the protests. And, it's like looking for a lighthouse during a hurricane.
That's a really good way to put it.
Right, because when a system of this magnitude fails, people don't just want the news updates. They're craving a framework to make sense of the chaos.
Yeah, because millions of young people are competing for this tiny fraction of medical seats.
It's an insane bottleneck. But I have to ask, why does a failing exam system like allegations of paper leaks and structural collapse, why does that trigger an existential crisis for these kids rather than just an administrative headache?
Because it creates a profound psychological fracture.
Okay.
To understand why it triggers an existential crisis, we have to look at cognitive dissonance.
Right.
From a very young age, these students have essentially entered into an unwritten behavioral contract with society.
A contract that says what, exactly?
It dictates that if they sacrifice their youth, if
Yeah.
they adopt extreme discipline, and if they study relentlessly,
Then the system will reward them fairly.
exactly, it will accurately reward them with a secure future.
So they're literally trading their present vitality for a guaranteed future outcome.
And they do so believing that the sorting mechanism, the exam itself, is infallible.
Wow. Yeah, they have to believe it's fair.
So when the system is compromised, like through these paper leaks where questions get out early, that fundamental behavioral contract is totally breached.
It's shattered.
Yeah, the student isn't just dealing with a delayed test. They are dealing with this sudden, horrifying realization that the system they surrendered their youth to might actually be arbitrary.
Or just completely corrupt.
Exactly. They lose their locus of control. And that is why that message is so desperate. They're basically asking, how do I make sense of a world that just broke its biggest promise to me?
Man, that context makes Simichi's response in our main text Beyond the Rank incredibly compelling.
It shifts everything.
Because faced with this massive logistical crisis, he doesn't address the administration. He doesn't, analyze the news cycle or the testing centers.
No, he totally bypasses all of that.
He goes straight to the human element. He starts by looking at the child.
And that paradigm shift is the foundation of his entire critique.
It's brilliant.
By starting with a child, he moves the lens from a systemic failure to a human tragedy.
Yeah, the essay talks about this relentless, almost mechanical script that society feeds these kids.
Right, from the moment they can understand language, basically.
Yeah. The instructions are stark. It's like, compete, defeat others, become a doctor, make your parents proud, secure your future.
Notice how those verbs are entirely combative.
Compete and defeat. Yeah, it's a war zone.
It frames education not as this beautiful exploration of knowledge, but literally as a zero-sum battle for survival.
Where millions of young minds are trained to believe their entire existence can be validated by just a single rank on a single day.
And then the author drops a line that just anchors this whole critique.
Oh, I know the one.
After listing that relentless script, he observes, "Nobody asks whether you are alive inside." Whether you are alive inside. Okay, let's unpack this because it's a huge statement.
It highlights a massive blind spot in our institutions.
It does. But, playing devil's advocate here, I think anyone navigating the realities of our modern world might naturally want to push back on this premise just a little.
How so?
Well, resources are finite, right?
Yeah.
Medical school seats, corporate promotions, funding grants. There just isn't enough for everyone who wants one.
Mathematically, yes, you're right.
So we have to have some mechanism to sort people out. Competition kind of seems like a natural, unavoidable, biological and social reality.
So why does the author frame this specific drive for success as the root of a fallen system, rather than just, the harsh reality of a crowded world?
That's a great question. And the author doesn't seem to be denying the mathematical reality of finite resources at all.
Okay.
The distinction he's making is about the motivation underlying the competition.
The motivation.
Yeah. There is a huge difference between a system that encourages competition in the pursuit of excellence
Oh, I see.
and a system that weaponizes competition in the pursuit of pure status.
Wow, okay. That's a huge difference.
Sumiji actually addresses this directly when he talks about the student's reaction to the failures. He asks them, "But why are you shocked?"
Oh, so he's questioning their surprise that people cheated.
Exactly. He's pointing out this direct line of causality. He argues that a corrupt society simply cannot produce a pure examination system.
Because the exam isn't floating in a vacuum outside of culture.
No, it is a direct product of that culture.
So the test is essentially just a mirror reflecting the broader values of the society that built it.
Exactly. And what that mirror shows is that the actual leak, the real compromise of integrity, it didn't begin in a testing center on the morning of the exam.
Where did it begin?
According to his analysis, it started way earlier. It began with unchecked parental ambition projecting anxiety onto a child.
Oh, wow.
It began with political maneuvering. It began the very moment society collectively agreed that acquiring the symbol of success, the rank, was more important than acquiring actual knowledge.
It's like experiencing hyperinflation in an economy, but with academic value.
That is a great analogy.
Right. If everyone agrees that the printed currency is all that matters, eventually people will just start counterfeiting the money rather than doing the actual labor.
Yes. Society demanded success at absolutely any cost.
And now society is acting all surprised when individuals actually pay that cost by, circumventing the rules to get the answers beforehand.
You cannot cultivate an entire generation to believe that defeating others is the sole purpose of their youth, and then feign shock when people cheat to guarantee that defeat.
Yeah, the collapse of the institution's integrity is just the inevitable mathematical result of the values it was built on.
Precisely.
But if the system is indeed a corrupt mirror and the foundations themselves are compromised, the logical next question is, how is a person supposed to navigate it?
Right. What do you do?
Because the text absolutely encourages students to push back and protest the injustice.
It does, but it provides a highly specific, very rigorous set of instructions on how to execute that resistance.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Because the mechanics of protest outlined in Beyond the Rank, they require a massive amount of psychological discipline.
A staggering amount, honestly.
He instructs students to protest, but to do it consciously.
Right. He explicitly warns against violence.
He argues that adopting violent methods simply makes you identical to the oppressive system you're trying to dismantle.
There's a quote here that breaks down the leverage of outrage so clearly. Do you have it?
Yes, I do. The author writes, "The politician needs your anger. The media needs your tears. The police need one stone to justify 100 sticks."
It's chilling.
It really is. It highlights such a dark reality about how institutions manage dissent.
It illustrates the fundamental difference between crowd psychology and individual consciousness.
Right?
Sumaji issues this really stark warning. Do not become a crowd.
Why not?
Because a crowd, by its very nature, outsources its intelligence. As he notes, a crowd has no inherent intelligence. It only possesses accumulated anger.
It's just raw, unguided kinetic energy.
Exactly. And massive systems of power are highly experienced in managing raw kinetic energy.
Oh, they know exactly how to absorb it, redirect it, or just use it to justify expanding their own power.
Exactly. If a group of protesters throws a single stone, the system no longer has to answer questions about a leaked exam paper.
They get to change the conversation entirely to public safety and law enforcement.
Which is why the author's demand is so incredibly difficult to execute in practice.
Yeah, he's asking these kids to demand accountability from a massive, flawed institution, but without surrendering their internal psychological balance to the very people they're protesting against.
Demand accountability, but do not surrender your inner balance.
It's an instruction to maintain total sovereignty over your own mind, even when the external circumstances are just chaotic and unfair.
It's a huge ask for anyone, let alone an anxious student.
And even if they manage that incredibly difficult task, if they hold the system accountable without losing their composure, they're still left facing a much quieter, more insidious problem.
Yeah, the text pivots here.
Right, from the physical compromise of the exam to what he calls the deeper leak.
Hmm.
So what does this all mean conceptually?
Well, this is where the philosophical analysis reaches its core insight, really.
Okay.
Because resolving a compromised test paper or, arresting those responsible and rescheduling an exam, those are ultimately just logistical challenges.
Sure.
But rebuilding the internal psychological landscape of an entire generation of students, that is a much more complex crisis.
Yeah, he details this deeper leak by telling the students, your life has been leaking away into comparison. Your youth has been sacrificed to anxiety. Your intelligence has been reduced to memory. Your worth has been reduced to a number.
Your intelligence has been reduced to memory. That line really highlights a severe flaw in how we educate.
We are essentially treating vibrant, creative human minds as biological hard drives
Just meant to store and regurgitate data points.
and tethering their entire self-esteem to the retrieval speed of that hard drive on one specific afternoon.
It's absurd when you put it like that. When you reduce intelligence to memory, you strip away the capacity for synthesis, for original thought and for empathy.
Which brings up a really critical point regarding the specific field these students are trying to enter.
Medicine.
Right. The NEET exam is the gateway to the medical profession. And the text makes a very pointed observation about what happens when medical education is filtered through this high-anxiety machinery.
Yeah, he notes that medicine is beautiful when it's rooted in intelligence and compassion.
But he warns about the inverse scenario. When medical education is rooted in fear, in this desperate, hyper-competitive grasp for status.
The fundamental nature of the profession changes.
Yeah. He concludes that under those conditions, even the doctor becomes ill inside.
Because you cannot build a foundation of true healing on a bedrock of anxiety.
You just can't. If the primary motivation for becoming a physician was simply to defeat your peers and get a high rank, you might acquire the technical data to diagnose a symptom, sure.
But the art of medicine requires profound empathy.
Right. The ability to view a patient as a complex human being, not just some biological puzzle to be solved for points.
A system that rewards ruthless competition and basically penalizes emotional bandwidth, it's inevitably going to produce technically proficient but internally hollow practitioners.
The systemic rot just carries forward right into the actual application of the profession.
And this is exactly why his final urgent message to the student is about identity.
Yes.
The ultimate tragedy, in his view, isn't failing the examination.
It's allowing the examination to become the totality of your identity.
Exactly. The phrasing he uses is so deliberate. He writes, "The government may have failed you. The examination board may have failed you, but do not allow one examination to become your entire identity."
You are not your rank. You are not your marks. You are not the dream your parents placed on your shoulders before you were old enough to refuse it.
That is the ultimate philosophical takeaway we can extract from this whole situation.
It's powerful.
Samichi argues that, sure, society can change the politicians in power, they can implement stricter security for exam papers, they can overhaul the administrative boards.
But as he explicitly states, unless the inner system changes, one examination will be replaced by another, one scandal by another, one ambition by another.
The outer machinery of society is just going to invent a new metric to compress human value.
Right. And if only those external logistics change without a real shift in the internal values of society, the text concludes that the child will remain missing.
The vibrant, complex, alive inside human being will just continue to be lost in the machinery of whatever new system replaces the old one.
So the directive is to fight the injustice of the system, but to absolutely refuse to validate the system's core premise that your worth is tied to its metrics.
Exactly. You have to opt out internally.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, it becomes clear that while our sources today are focused heavily on the NEET exam and medical students, the underlying mechanics apply to almost every facet of our modern world.
Oh, they are everywhere.
It really makes you wonder about the structures in your own life. When you listening to this are prepping for a high-stakes corporate performance review or, I don't know, trying to master a new field.
Or even just feeling that low-level constant hum of anxiety to succeed on social media.
Yes, you are interacting with these exact same mechanisms of comparison and compression.
You have to ask yourself, are you allowing your unique intelligence and creativity to be reduced to mere memory or task execution?
Are you allowing your complex human worth to be reduced to a quarterly goal or some digital metric?
It requires a massive amount of self-awareness to step back and recognize when you're participating in a system that literally relies on your anxiety to function.
It really does, because
Yeah.
it is so easy to slowly leak away your own vitality into endless comparison without even realizing the behavioral contract you signed.
You don't even know you signed it until it's too late.
Exactly. And that leads to a final thought I want to leave you with, something to mull over that builds on the implications of everything we've explored today.
Yeah.
We've established the argument that many of our modern educational and professional systems function primarily as ruthless sorting mechanisms for status, right? Rather than actual incubators for intellect or original thought or compassion.
Right.
But look at the trajectory of the world around us. Look at the massive, deeply complex existential problems we are facing globally across every single sector, from healthcare to technology to environmental stability.
There are huge problems.
So if our systems are primarily designed to produce anxious, hyper-competitive status seekers who are just exceptionally good at memorizing established scripts, what happens to those massive global problems?
Wow.
Because those are challenges that desperately require empathetic, deeply unanxious, and highly original thinking to solve. If we continue to reduce our brightest minds to a single number on a screen, who is going to be left with enough humanity and creative bandwidth to actually heal the world?
That's the real question.
Think about that the next time you find yourself staring at a metric waiting for it to tell you who you are.